The air hung heavy with expectation, a hushed quiet that followed months of unsettling silence. A name, whispered in hushed tones across sacristies and dinner tables, was suddenly on everyone's lips: Carlo Maria Viganò. After a period of profound introspection, following the election of Pope Leo, the former nuncio to the United States had finally, dramatically, spoken. His recent public messages, including an interview that sent shockwaves through the Catholic world, were more than just statements. They were a meticulously laid out, deeply researched challenge, impossible for anyone to ignore. Regardless of your stance, his words demand to be heard, for sometimes the truths we resist are precisely the ones we need to confront most urgently. Imagine a vast, ancient cathedral, its stained glass windows depicting centuries of faith, its stone walls echoing with prayers. Now imagine a profound crack, not in the stone, but in the very heart of the community gathered within. This is the image that comes to mind when considering the current state of the Church. On one side, there are those, some genuinely hopeful, others perhaps simply swept along, who view Pope Leo as a beacon of progress, a fresh start. His gentle demeanor, his seemingly open approach, appears to promise a new era. Yet on the other side, voices like Archbishop Viganò's are growing louder, clearer, and more urgent. They see not a break from the past, but a perilous continuation of a dangerous path, one that, in their view, began years ago, even before the last pontificate. Viganò, in his recent pronouncements, doesn't resort to hyperbole or emotional outbursts. Instead, with a calm, almost surgical precision, he delivers a stark assessment. Pope Leo, he contends, is merely the refined mask of a deeper spiritual crisis. This new pope may possess a gentler tone, a more polished appearance, but the underlying direction, Viganò warns, remains unchanged, a steady, subtle weakening of the Catholic Church's foundational teachings and its very identity. This isn't some vague theological musing. Viganò points to concrete, disturbing examples. He highlights questionable appointments within the hierarchy, alliances forged with extreme voices within the synodal movement, and a disconcerting alignment with global climate agendas that seem to overshadow the Church's spiritual mission. He also draws attention to the Pope's public appearances with political figures whose values, he argues, starkly conflict with traditional Church beliefs. Viganò's warning is designed to shatter an illusion. He believes the Church today is caught in a kind of elaborate performance, a grand show of dialogue and openness, all while subtly concealing the influence of powerful groups whose interests lie far from the gospel. Whether fully aware or not, he posits, the Pope has become an integral part of this unsettling system. It is from this disquieting foundation that Viganò begins to meticulously unpack what he perceives as a series of troubling actions, confusing decisions, and profound contradictions that have marked the early days of Pope Leo's leadership. He describes a disturbing pattern, one that many had hoped would remain concealed. According to Viganò, a clear double standard is at play. Certain clergy, even those with serious past offenses, are not only welcomed back, but actively reinstated into positions of power. Meanwhile, communities deeply devoted to the traditional Latin Mass, the old form of the liturgy, are systematically pushed aside, broken up, and treated with what he describes as undeniable unfairness. These aren't just abstract accusations. Viganò provides specific, chilling examples. In France, the head of a diocese in Toulouse chose to bestow a high-ranking role upon a priest with a profoundly disturbing past. The official explanation offered? It was framed as an act of kindness and compassion. Yet, Viganò points out, this very same leadership, so quick to forgive this individual, came down with crushing severity on those attached to traditional worship, effectively shutting them out. And the pattern doesn't end there. In the Italian city of Ferrara, another priest with a similar history of serious misconduct was given responsibility for youth outreach, this time with the explicit support of one of Italy's most prominent church officials. Viganò presents all of this not as mere opinion, but as irrefutable evidence. He believes these choices unveil a deep, unsettling imbalance. Those loyal to long-standing Catholic tradition face punishment and marginalization, while others, despite serious wrongdoing, are granted second chances and even positions of honor. Viganò does not mince words, nor does he attempt to soften his message. He is unflinchingly clear about the strange and dangerous direction he believes the Church is heading. To him, it's akin to asking a wild animal to protect swimmers at the beach. It simply doesn't make sense. What appears to be mercy toward those who have caused real harm, he argues, tragically transforms into a cruel indifference towards the victims and toward faithful believers who have remained steadfast in their adherence to church teachings. This isn't merely a disagreement over administrative decisions. Viganò sees it as a profound symptom of something far deeper, a spiritual confusion where everything seems inverted. Wrongdoing is quietly excused, the timeless beauty of tradition is mocked or dismissed, and justice is no longer a paramount priority. Instead of true healing, there is more hurt. Instead of clarity and truth, there is an unsettling silence. He believes this pattern is repeating itself endlessly. Those who caused harm are often protected or even rewarded, while their victims are forgotten. And those who bravely attempt to speak up for what the Church has always taught, they are frequently pushed aside, ignored, or even labeled as the problem. For Viganò, this isn't just a mistake. It illuminates how profoundly broken the leadership mindset has become. Those who should be called to account are praised, while the ones who truly love and serve the faith are left out in the cold. He views it as an urgent warning that something is fundamentally and gravely wrong. According to Viganò, what distinguishes Pope Leo isn't necessarily a radical shift in his core beliefs, but rather the polished way he presents them. He appears calm, respectful, and gentle, particularly when compared to his predecessor. His tone is undeniably softer, more conciliatory. But Viganò issues a potent warning. This new, more appealing appearance does not, in fact, signify a change in direction. Behind the smoother language and polite manner, he insists, lies the same plan, quietly, steadily continuing. The packaging may be more attractive, but the course, he argues, is still steering the Church away from its foundational principles. To articulate this crucial idea, Viganò employs a powerful and evocative phrase: modernism with a friendly face. This isn't merely a clever turn of phrase. It's a deliberate echo of an old political slogan from history, drawing a stark parallel to the socialism with a human face movement that once offered a fleeting glimpse of hope in Prague, only to ultimately end in bitter disappointment and renewed control. The message is crystal clear. Appearances can be deeply deceptive. Viganò expresses profound concern that the Pope's kind and measured approach might lull many into a false sense of security. A softer, more reassuring voice can indeed feel comforting, but he warns that it might be skillfully concealing the very same troubling direction that the Church has been heading toward for years. For him, the true danger lies not in what is explicitly being said, but in what is quietly and subtly being continued. Many people, he explains, genuinely believe there has been a major, fundamental shift simply because this Pope avoids public arguments or uses harsh language. But Viganò warns that focusing solely on style can be profoundly misleading. According to him, if you carefully examine the choices Pope Leo is making, the people he is promoting, the public statements he has made, his early strategic moves as Pope, there is no real discernible break with the immediate past. One stark example he cites is the Pope's widely publicized celebration of a so-called ecological mass and his conspicuously close ties with the more extreme voices advocating for synod-style reforms. Viganò urgently implores people not to be swayed by what is being promised or how things sound, but instead to pay unwavering attention to what is actually happening. A pope who continues to rely on the same advisors, employs the same slogans, and persists in the same general direction as his predecessor, even if he appears more graceful, should not, Viganò insists, be mistaken for something genuinely new or different. In Viganò's view, the driving force behind the Church's current, profound transformation is the concept of synodality. But far from being a genuine path to renewal, he sees it as a subtle, quiet strategy designed to strip the Church of its sacred, divinely ordained foundation and ultimately transform it into a controlled, lifeless institution that serves the interests of powerful, secular elites. He argues that what is being presented to the faithful as openness and shared leadership is, in truth, a meticulously planned illusion. Rather than real involvement by the faithful, synodality, he claims, becomes a carefully staged performance, where a small, influential group guides the entire process behind the scenes, skillfully giving the impression that decisions are organically emerging from the people, when in reality, they have already been predetermined. Viganò's critique extends far beyond mere theological debate. He warns of its very real, tangible impact on the Church's mission. He believes this new structure is a kind of spiritual theater, expertly concealing its true, unsettling purpose beneath layers of seemingly benign language about inclusion and dialogue. To him, it disturbingly mirrors what happened during the French Revolution, a dramatic societal shift that loudly claimed to represent the will of the people but, in a cruel irony, led directly to a new and even more insidious form of control, all under the deceptive appearance of freedom. He describes these synods as inherently scripted events, gatherings where outcomes are decided well in advance, long before anyone even speaks, and votes are merely used to generate a false sense of unity and consensus. These pre-orchestrated results are then triumphantly announced as if they genuinely reflect the true, organic voice of the entire Church. The deeper, more insidious danger, he warns, is that the very role of the Pope could be reduced to little more than a figurehead, a symbolic leader utterly devoid of real authority, while the actual substantive decisions are made by tightly organized and ideologically driven groups working diligently behind the scenes. For a considerable time, Viganò has been raising urgent concerns about a steadily growing number of changes within the Church, trends that, in his discerning view, point to something far deeper than mere modern updates or necessary reforms. He is convinced there is a quiet, yet utterly deliberate effort underway to fundamentally reshape the Church from the inside out. He draws particular attention to several key developments that illustrate this alarming trajectory. For instance, he notes the increasing, persistent calls to expand sacred duties and roles to include laypeople and, significantly, women. He also highlights the introduction of entirely new roles and ministries that, according to him, subtly shift the focus away from the core of worship and holiness toward more practical, often administrative, tasks. Step by step, he contends, the Church is being systematically restructured to resemble a secular organization, run by boards and planners, rather than remaining a spiritual family guided by faith, prayer, and divine grace. In his eyes, this is not a matter of harmless innovation or progressive adaptation. He sees it, rather, as the active dismantling of something sacred, something divinely established. He believes these moves are systematically chipping away at the divine order established by Christ himself, a church meant to be led by true pastors and spiritual fathers, not by committees and coordinators. Instead of a living, breathing community rooted in grace and sacrament, it is becoming, in his view, a flat, mechanical system, easy to manage and, crucially, just as easy to manipulate. And he doesn't stop there. Viganò argues that this isn't merely a strategic mistake. It represents a profound, deep-seated spiritual threat. He describes it as an open rejection of Christ's supreme authority over his own church. In doing so, he believes, it also tragically turns its back on the unique, irreplaceable role of the Pope and even the rich, intertwined history of Christian leadership in the world, including the faithful kings and rulers who, in ages past, upheld and protected the Church's sacred values. For Viganò, this fundamental shift away from the divine towards something purely man-made is inherently dangerous. It strips the Church of her inherent mystery, her profound beauty, and her essential connection to heaven. It replaces eternal truth with fleeting trends and sacred worship with sterile strategy meetings. In his eyes, it is not merely a change in structure, it is a quiet, yet utterly devastating rebellion against the very heart of the faith. Synodality, he emphatically states, is the Church's unsettling version of a revolution. It may appear kind, inclusive, and appealing on the surface, but it carries within it a hidden resentment for the order that originates from God. In his view, it cunningly hides behind the attractive idea of democracy to advance a completely different goal, one that fundamentally undermines the Church's sacred foundations while deceptively pretending to uplift the people. At this absolutely critical juncture, Viganò believes Pope Leo faces a defining, inescapable choice. He stands at a momentous turning point, poised between preserving the Church's sacred, unchanging mission or allowing it to slide even further into a system that may appear peaceful and unified on the surface, but beneath it carries a far more troubling and destructive agenda. Viganò presents a stark, almost agonizing choice that he believes Pope Leo can no longer avoid. The Church, he insists, must make a decisive choice. Continue down a path that seeks and wins the approval of secular powers and those fundamentally opposed to its core teachings, or courageously turn back to the unvarnished truth of the gospel and the sacred traditions faithfully handed down through the centuries. This, in his view, is not merely a political or administrative dilemma, but a deeply, profoundly spiritual crossroads that will determine the very future of the faith. In Viganò's eyes, the Church now stands at a critical turning point, a moment where its very soul is being tested. He believes the time for hesitation, for indecision, is definitively over. There can no longer be any room for blending the eternal truth of the gospel with the constantly shifting, ephemeral ideas of the modern world. Trying to win the approval of secular voices, even in subtle, seemingly innocuous ways, is not just a risky move. It is, he contends, a surrender, a quiet yet undeniable betrayal of the sacred mission Christ entrusted to Peter and his successors. Viganò then powerfully brings us back to a profound moment in Scripture, a moment when Jesus looked directly at Peter, the rock upon whom his church would be built, and said, "I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail." For Viganò, those words resonate with immense significance today. They are not a judgment, but a promise, a solemn call to remain strong, to persevere. They serve as a crucial reminder that even in times of profound weakness, confusion, or apparent abandonment, Christ remains intimately close to his church, never truly letting go. Yet Viganò delivers a serious, almost desperate warning. The window of opportunity for course correction is rapidly growing smaller, closing with each passing day. The profound confusion of recent years, the endless unsettling reforms, the soft, blurring words that deliberately obscure the line between what is true and what is false, these things, he insists, must come to a definitive end. The Church, he states emphatically, was never meant to simply follow the world's lead. It was never supposed to merely echo the transient voices of politics or culture. Its true, divine calling is something infinitely greater. The Church is meant to stand out, to shine brightly in the encroaching darkness, to speak an uncomfortable truth where there is pervasive deception, and to offer hope and salvation through a message that is immutable, that does not change with the tides of time. That is where its enduring strength lies, not in adapting to the fickle demands of the times, but in remaining utterly faithful to the unchanging truth handed down through generations of saints and martyrs. For Viganò, the choice is simple, yet staggeringly urgent. Return to Christ, to his unadulterated truth, or drift even further away from everything the Church was divinely created to be. This, Viganò insists, is the only path forward, not reform through radical reinvention, but profound renewal through a courageous return. A return to holiness, to unwavering courage, to absolute clarity. It is not too late, he maintains, but the window, indeed, is narrow. The Church must remember who she truly is, and more importantly, who she truly serves.